Hey everyone, today's topic is time travel. It's one of my favorite things ever and one of the most requested topics by you all. Time travel movies can get really complicated really fast. With all the back and forth between timelines, present, past, future, it's not uncommon to see sci fi movies breaking their own rules. The concept behind these movies has a long history in cinema, and any movie that ventures into this theme has the challenge of dealing with hypothetical physics and establishing its own internal logic. It's not simple to choose between one timeline or multiple and decide if the characters can or cannot alter the past. Not to mention the need to maintain a consistent theory and respect the rules established throughout the movie and sometimes even in the sequels. Indeed, even the most acclaimed time travel movies end up breaking their own rules. For this reason, in today's video, I brought you the ranking of best science fiction movies that break their own time travel rules. Shall we go together? To start off, you already know, comment your two favorite time travel movies below. If there are movies that I haven't watched yet, I'll look for it, and who knows, I might bring a new video to the channel. Deal? Let's chat. The Butterfly Effect. The way the movie The Butterfly Effect handles time travel rules is so problematic that it still annoys many fans. Ivan Treborn, the main character, experiences episodes of amnesia at the most significant moments of his life, which we later learn are the periods when he time travels. According to the film's assumption, every time Ivan goes back in time and makes any change, even the slightest, it should result in a new timeline. But the film seems to forget its own rules when Ivan, after being arrested for murder, convinces a colleague of Salad's that he can travel back in time. He then goes back to his childhood, badly injures his hands, and returns to the present, already scarred as if by magic. Clearly, the butterfly effect does not apply here because Ivan's actions do not generate a new timeline, nor do they bring consequences for his drastic interference in the past. So, have you watched the butterfly effect? Do you agree with what I said? Comment below. Back to the Future. Back to the Future is probably the most well known and best loved time travel franchise, even with a few holes in the script that people always talk about. For example, it's a little odd how George McFly and Lorraine Baines don't recognize Calvin Klein, who is none other than their own son, Marty McFly. But it is in Back to the Future Part 2 that the rules of time travel are broken most evidently. As per the film's narrative, any minor action in the past should have the capability to change the future, resulting in a completely different timeline. Unlike the happy ending in the first film that occurs thanks to Marty's good deeds, leading to a better year of 1985 where his father is seen asserting himself triumphantly over Biff Tannen, the second film somewhat bends its own set rules. In the year 2015, an aged Biff gets the sports almanac discarded by Marty and uses Lorraine's DeLorean to travel back to 1955 to give the almanac to his younger self to get rich. But when he returns in 2015, he goes back to the same timeline he left from, something that, under the rules of the franchise, would be impossible. The timeline from which Biff departed should have been erased by his actions, which benefited his younger self. Instead, he should have gone back to an alternate dystopian 2015, which is shown later in Back to the Future 2, where Biff, Donald Trump style, lives in wealth thanks to his betting profits and is married to Lorraine. The fact that he went back to 2015 where Marge and Dr. Brown are without realizing anything only serves the plot of the film, but completely ignores the rules of time travel that the franchise itself has established. Comment below if you agree or if you have any other explanation. It's a matter of time. The film About Time follows the story of Tim Lake, who, upon his 21st birthday, discovers that he has inherited the ability to travel through time, a gift passed down only to the men in his family. His father, James, explains the rules. They can only travel to the past, and they have to be alive when they get back. James also says that ancestors tried to use this power to get rich and famous, but it didn't work. So Tim decides to use his power to better his love life. A Matter of Time focuses more on the romantic possibilities that time travel allows rather than the rules or logic of it. The movie switches up its own rules, particularly when Tim decides to help his sister Kit Kat, who ends up in the hospital after a catastrophic relationship with Timmy Kincaid. Tim takes her back in time, disregarding the rule that only men can travel back to a time before she meets Jimmy and witnesses his true intentions. After this, Tim and Kit Kat return to the present, which would basically count as another time travel, breaking another rule. In addition, Tim finds out that his daughter, Pose, is now a boy, exposing yet another rule. Traveling to before a child is born may change who they will be. However, later on in the movie, Tim and James journey back to Tim's childhood, and this doesn't result in any child being replaced, contradicting the logic once again. So have you ever watched this film before? Do you agree with the theory? Leave a comment below. Looper! Looper is a gangster feel sci-fi movie where a criminal organization from the near future sends people back in time to be killed off by assassins known as loopers. The main character, Joey, is one of these loopers. The plot turns complex when the organization decides to close the loop by sending the older looper to be executed by his younger self. This concept introduces the so-called grandfather paradox, according to which if someone were to travel back in time to kill their grandfather, they could not be born, and consequently could not travel back in time to commit the murder. The film explains that any injury sustained by a character's younger self shows up instantly on the body of their older self. An example of this is when young Seth fails to kill his older self and is captured by the mob. They etch an address into his arm, and the same mark appears on the arm of the older Seth. As the mobsters mutilate the young Seths, the eldest begins to lose fingers, nose, limbs. The visual impact is strong, but theoretically the older Seth should remember suffering these mutilations when he was younger, instead of watching in horror as his body parts disappear. At the climax of the film, to stop old Joey from killing Sarah and thus giving birth to the villain Rainmaker, young Joe decides to kill himself, eliminating old Joey in the process. According to the logic established by the film, this would mean that the entire plot never happened, because if old Joey never existed, young Joey would have no reason to kill himself. This paradox could be resolved by introducing alternate timelines that branch out with changes of the past, but the film opts to maintain a single timeline, which limits its narrative possibilities and intensifies the paradoxes. So did you like this movie? Have you watched it? Comment below. Avengers Endgame. The time travel in Endgame takes a stance where the past cannot be altered, as it has already occurred. This prevents the notorious grandfather paradox and conserves the events of the preceding films in the franchise. Nevertheless, it appears that this rule is made flexible whenever it is needed for the plot. In line with Novikov's self-consistency principle adopted in the film, it is unfeasible to create time paradoxes. A time traveler can only perform in the past what has already happened, as Bruce explains Banner, quote, "If you travel back to your own past, that destination will become your future, and your old present will become the past, which now cannot be changed by your new future." At the end of Avengers Endgame, we see a break from these rules. Instead of Captain America returning immediately to the sacred timeline after returning the Infinity Stones and Mjolnir, he decides to dwell in the past to grow old. With Peggy Carter, and later appears as an elderly man to pass on his shield. This changes the story in the present, creating a loophole in the rules established by the film. According to the very logic presented, Steve Rogers would have made this impossible by altering his future, an action which the film does not justify or explain sufficiently. Subsequently, the Russo brothers, the film's directors, attempted to clarify this ending. They suggested that Captain America moved between timelines, lived his life with Peggy, and somehow returned for the Avengers Endgame finale using a branching reality, a concept mentioned by the Ancient One in the film. However, as the rules of time travel in the Marvel Cinematic Universe are extremely complex and rely on an elaborate interpretation of the Novikov principle, which the film does not detail clearly, Avengers Endgame ends up being just as inconsistent as the other films we explored in this video. Leave your ideas and questions in the comments. I'd love to talk more about the subjects of the video. If you enjoyed the video, please like, share, and subscribe. Now, there are some suggestions for the next videos appearing up here. It makes sense watching them. I'll see you in the next video. See you later. Subtitles by the Amara.org community.